Well, after the trial of a Time Lord, Doctor Who was in pretty bad shape. I don't mean the character per se, I mean the show overall, and cancellation seemed imminent. But they got one last reprieve. But John Nathan Turner was told, you got to get a new doctor. And he was like, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, most doctors at the minimum do 3 years. And they said, yeah, Colin's done 3. And he said, well, no, he hasn't actually. Well, you know, had they given them the ability to produce more episodes, he would have. So they forced them to fire Colin Baker from the role and get a new doctor in the hopes that this would spark new interest in the series and all that. It was a raw deal for Colin Baker because a lot of what the problems of the show is not his fault. There's been some amount of redemption of his doctor in the Big Finish and all that. There are a lot of ways I could see his arrogant doctor could work, because there's a lot of arrogance in the doctor's character if you look all the way back to the beginning. And but I mean, the clown suit, the terrible plots and stuff, which are only going to get worse. So in some ways maybe he got off lucky, you know, but it was a raw deal for him, and especially since he I guess he was still paid according to the contract or something, because I mean they were telling him at the time not to say that he was no longer the doctor. Because he was like, well, then I need to go get work elsewhere. No, not yet. You know, that kind of thing. And so they, you know, auditioned new doctors, and they settled on Sylvester McCoy, who was sort of this clown guy type guy. I think he did performances for children and stuff, and they thought, hey, yeah, goofy guy, that's what the doctor is. Well, not exactly, but anyway, they went with it. They thought he was the best of the batch that tried out, you know. And then they suddenly realized they hadn't shot their regeneration scene. or even a reason why the doctor would regenerate. They could have just not done it and said, well, something happened. I mean, at this point, they were screwing up all over the place. They had introduced mail through that thing, and it seemed to insinuate, like, I guess they would follow up on it had Colin stayed on for another season to show their first actual adventure together. It was all a mess, and the way it was written, he couldn't possibly have known about that because he hadn't lived it yet. It was really, boy, did they drop the ball continuity-wise within their own narrative, which is within a few episodes, you know. So, oh boy, just beyond all the stuff saying, hey, this sets are getting cheap and all that. I don't care about any of that, really. The storylines were just collapsing. So anyway, that's what they did. They had one more little chance. Well, I mean, you know, you get a couple of more, I guess. But they decided to give this a go with Sylvester McCoy as the 7th Doctor. And that's when they started thinking, and perhaps they were already, that was percolating with, you know, Valeyard and all that stuff, that they were going to delve into the Doctor's past, and with the hopes of making him more mysterious. Not that they were actually really going to go and explain everything, which is what you shouldn't do. It's called Doctor Who, you know. Yeah. Then some idiot came along and decided to do it anyway years later. But anyway, so Sylvester McCoy he's the new Doctor, and they quickly do a regeneration scene with him wearing a wig to look like Colin Baker in Colin Baker's suit, and have his face all glowing and stuff, which is probably the first time they ever really did that. I mean, I guess technically that kind of happened when Peter Davison regenerated, but I just thought that was all from the Doctor's viewpoint of him kind of fading out as he regenerated. But anyway, because the only time you actually really see them change, other than, well, I guess not Pertwee, Hartnell and Troughton, when it closes in on their face. So there's that. But when Pertwee turned into Baker, that was like just right there. Boom, there it is. And then Baker into Davidson, but it was all that Watcher stuff in the way. So it is kind of different each time, But with the new shows, he's always glowing and everything. It was a bit much, if you ask me. But nevertheless, here that appears to happen. And of course, they needed it to kind of hide the face. He's turning into someone else, when it was McCoy laying there the whole time. But anyway, so there he is, and he's like all regenerations. He's not himself just yet. His brains are all is jangled and everything. And turns out that TARDIS had been attacked by the Rani. What's a Rani anyway? Well, I've known some Ranis, but anyway, you remember her. Started the female master before there was a female master. If Romano was still around, that might have been interesting if they'd been. But anyway, the opening sequences of the TARDIS, they're showing off their computer animation, and it looked terrible. And which is odd, because the new opening sequence, it's still kind of cheesy looking, but it's not as bad as this opening sequence. I don't know what the deal was. Why didn't they just make use of that? I'm two different crews on that. I don't know. But it's pretty bad. And but the landing sequence is all right, I guess. And then they're on this planet with chicken lizard people. I don't know. And Ronnie's up to no good, of course. She's got this plot to kidnap geniuses from all across the cosmos and drain their brains to create a super brain that can create a super duper time manipulator, so that she can dominate the universe or whatever. So the Doctor's one of the brains she wants, along with Albert Einstein, who's the only other brain we noticed or recognized, and all that. And so that's why she sought out the Doctor to kidnap him and to help with that and manipulate him into doing it. And it almost works out, but of course, Male, meanwhile, is left behind, but then she joins up with this rebellious faction of the lizard chicken people. Well, I say chicken. They didn't really have anything chicken-like. I guess it's just they had these mohawks. The mohawk lizards decide to rebel. Well, there's a collaborator this is the only way to keep people alive and all that stuff. It doesn't really matter. It's kind of piss poor production here. The one cool thing they had, though, is that there were these traps out there that was sort of like a landmine, but when you trigger it, it traps you in this bubble and spins you around, and then as soon as it makes contact with something else, it explodes. That was actually pretty cool. And Male actually gets in one and is spinning around. But for some reason, when she hits the mountain, it didn't explode. So it was kind of I felt cheated. I'm sure she's a nice lady and everything, but I was never a fan of Male. I wasn't much of a fan of McCoy either. He's my least favorite of the original Doctors. But he did get the best outfit of the 80s era, because those 80s costumes were terrible. But his, not bad. It's actually more practical and in keeping with something the Doctor would wear. And he gets to change his clothes. He changes the jacket and stuff later on. Yeah, of course, the question marks on the vest is stupid, but, Nathan Turner demanded that question mark had to be there. Yeah, he's the Doctor, not the Riddler, but whatever. So anyway, that's pretty much it. It was a slap job of an episode, messed up because of how they screwed over Baker, and then said, "Hey man, could you come back and film regeneration?" Well, you know what he told them what they could do with their regeneration. So they made do with what they had. Of course, the Doctor eventually gets his wits back and defeats the Rani and these bat people servants that she's using to keep the lizard people under control. They worship her, but then they end up kidnapping her in her TARDIS and tying her up from the ceiling while they hang upside down. Yeah, it was pretty creepy and weird, but anyway, that's how that ended up. The Master never suffered a fate like that, But anyway, but Sylvester McCoy, it was a lot of these slapstick comedy things he would do and that kind of thing. Very cartoonish when he would round a corner. with his leg up and everything. But yeah, for the most part, for what it was, I guess he did all right. One of the dumb things about new doctors is, gee, how does the doctor get his outfit? Which, to this day, Pertwee is probably the best, where he just finds it. And he takes a liking to it. Whereas here, the Rani disguised as male. Not very well, but fooled him, though. They go in the TARDIS and they go through his wardrobe, and of course he wears past doctor's outfits. Got the wrong scarf, though, for Tom's thing. But anyway, and then, ta-da, he's got his new suit, which is kind of reminiscent of Kojak from the Night Stalker show. Not entirely, but, you know. Anyway, I guess it's just the hat. And that's about it, yeah. Boy, I tell you, Mel, another thing that bothers me about it is that when she, you know, of course, there's a lot of screaming when the monsters are chasing the girls and all that. But, man, her screaming. It's like, you'd think the monsters would surrender because, I mean, that is like fingernails on the chalkboard. Whew. But, well, anyway, that's about it, yeah. So, time in the Rani, and it was the Rani, but she didn't get the time. So, I guess that's that. So, there you go. That's the first adventure of the Seventh Doctor, who was supposed to become the Dark Doctor, the mysterious Doctor. And they tried to allude to that through this series, but another person who didn't have time was the Doctor, because it's about to run out. And looking back at some of these, I can see why. It's sad, but, well, call it Bad Doctor Who if you want, and I certainly have, but I didn't know what Bad Doctor Who was until recent times. Yeah, so there is that. Yeah.